And today we've got a killer episode for you. Have you ever felt like you're kind of self-sabotaging yourself? You ever had these big dreams, these big desires, these big ambitions, but goddamn, you just can't get out of your own way? That's what we're going to dive into today. Welcome to the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly. Do you see that DJ Lisa came in strong today with the good morning?
That's right.
And not only that, she's doubling it up again. LinkedIn and
Lisa,
YouTube. Good morning, Daman. Good to see you again, my friend. So today is a big one. Everybody, y'all can see who's here. Dooner from Freightwaves is here, and Dooner, I could tell you that the last time you and I spoke back on high performance logistics sales, gosh, going on a year and a half ago, I think now. Your story was amazing. And for today, the idea of getting out of our own way, the idea that we can kind of self-sabotage ourselves quite a bit. There's a lot of, not necessarily that I want to get into it, but there's a lot of talk about this whole Will Smith, Chris Rock thing, where it's kind of this self-sabotage that he's known for. Doesn't here or there, because I know we had that talk already. But, I'd like you to just share with the audience your backstory, because a lot of people see you as the super host on Freightwaves, on What the Truck, on Put the Coffee Down. Your style, you're just a very energetic, and like your energy is infectious in a really good way. But there's a backstory to Dooner that a lot of people don't know about. So I was hoping you could share that for us, and then we can start diving into getting out of our own way.
Well, now I want to get into the juicy thing, though, Dan and DJ. Have you ever had any slap fights at an award show with one another?
No. Okay. The only other time I've seen that is when Kid Rock and Tommy Lee went at it at the Grammys or something, or was it Grammys? I don't know, whatever it was.
Oh my gosh, I remember that.
Right when he was dating Pamela Anderson.
There's Danny Bonaducci, who also power bombed Johnny Fairplay on his head in the early 2000s, and his face exploded on stage.
No,
his entire nose just exploded on stage.
Why did I never?
Oh, okay. So there really was more than just that. And that was
there's the Source Awards. I mean, there's been violence at award shows. There's Guns N' Roses swearing at the American Award Show. It's happened.
And then Suge Knight, when he got up on stage and started talking about the East Coast, and then all of a sudden, and they were in New York for the Source Awards, and then all the West Coast guys get up to win an award, and the whole crowd. And I remember watching a documentary, and Snoop Dogg goes, "No, dude, we literally thought it was going down." He goes I had to play the, and it kind of reminded me of the old Eddie Murphy Delirious, where he goes, no, if you're ever in trouble and you don't think if I just go crazy, just act like you're crazy. And Snoop Dogg acted like he was crazy on stage. He goes, no, man, I had to play it like that. I had to play it like that.
Get at it. I was having a moment.
Yeah.
Well, we've all had them in life. We've all had our moments. I would not have quit drinking if I did not have any embarrassing moments in my
I hear you there. Mm-hmm.
What was the question? I kind of derailed it here by talking about slapping people at award shows.
Yeah, we've got a ton of good mornings, we've got a ton of waves, we got a ton of hellos, a ton of dooners. Yeah. Damn, you're getting into big time with Mr. What the Truck. Yes, sir. We finally hit it, gents. We finally hit it. Yeah. So the question was, Dooner, share your backstory, because again, you can tell just by the comments, people are raving about you. You got this energy, you got this just oomph about you that makes you perfect for the position you're in. But you didn't just fall into it. This is something that you actually cultivated and nurtured over time. And it started with some pretty troubling times.
Yeah, it did. So, I've been in this business in logistics since 2005, and I kind of fell into it. I was in the music industry beforehand, and I thought it would be a 3-month gig to get me through the winter and have some I was 26. I remember I just got off my dad's health insurance too. So it was I really needed a full-time job. I just moved back to Boston, and I went to FedEx Trade Networks. And then I learned so much about this business, and I got so caught up into it. But all along the way, ever since college, I've had issues with alcohol. I drank too much. And then when I got into sales, when I transitioned out of operations to sales, like it got just sort of really bad, having like the wins and the losses and having that work from home schedule. And I got to a point in my life where, you know, I'd had my first kid, my second kid was on the way. I was in this sales job. Things weren't working out. And the one idea I thought I had, the one lifeline I thought I had at that logistics sales job was to get better into content marketing with them. They were putting content out there, but like they weren't doing anything with it. And I thought if we did like a podcast, it would be a great Trojan horse. It'd be a great introduction. It would be a great way to have talks with some of the leaders in Boston whose doors I couldn't open. And fortunately, they didn't think that was a good idea. They didn't like me very much. And I got fired with 3 weeks before my second kid was born. And I remember when I was leaving the job, I was thinking like, because they gave me a live paycheck. And I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going to go buy a bottle of Tito's. And I did. And, I told my wife about the thing and I, felt low on myself. Then I went and got another bottle, another one. And then I was up, I'd been up for like a few days and I was up in the middle of the night and I called up a buddy of mine who I used to work with, who I knew went through a journey of recovery. And he was public and open with it to me. And it encouraged me to reach out to him when I had an issue and hold myself accountable. And I sent an email to him and my parents and my wife and said, look, you have to make sure I go into rehab tomorrow and I take care of these issues. And I did. And I checked into a 5-day rehab and I got to deal with clinical depression. I got to deal with alcoholism. And one of my counselors, when I was there, I sort of mentioned this podcast thing because he was like, well, what are you going to do next? That we want you to focus on your recovery, but you have to have some goals, right? So one of them was like, you know what? I think I'm going to just do this podcast anyway that I was thinking about because then it could be like a living resume for me and I can express some of my knowledge and I can make those same connections I thought would work in sales. And it was rough at first. Like I mentioned, we just had that second kid. I wasn't making any money. Fortunately, my wife was making a little bit, but not very much. We almost went bankrupt, but I built this site, this show called The Shipping Pod up from the ground up. And eventually we got heard by Steve Aborn at Freight Plus. And he hired me to ghostwrite some blogs and eventually make some podcasts. And then he hired me to be their marketing director. I launched their show, Consulting Logistics. And that led me to interviewing Craig Fuller. And then Craig Fuller said, hey, if you want a podcast full time, you need a job down here, come down to Chattanooga. So I came down here and it's actually a really cool week to be having this conversation because so much of what I do now is tethered to that journey and that decision to start the podcast and get into recovery that to me that they're so married. And I always think about this and I think about this job as active recovery. And this week, we're launching the next sort of iteration of what I've been doing, which is Back the Truck Up, which is a freight culture site by truckers and industry veterans, delivering news, opinions, commentary through articles, blogs, memes, podcasts, and TV shows. And that should be launching at the end of the week. Between this conversation and now, I've just been dealing with the new team on the back end and getting that content schedule together. And it's just been really cool and really sort of magical to just see it all grow and grow in a positive way.
Dooner, that is awesome, man.
Yes.
Like, oh, awesome. And you know what? A couple of things you said there strike home. Your content schedule, for one. The fact that there was no money, there was nothing, and you said, I'm going to do it anyways. Because it's what leads you. And oftentimes, DJ, how many times have we been talking about just in the last 2 weeks about would you do this for free? Like just do it. And how the things that you said about, why don't we use this as the Trojan horse and use this and use this? These are all conversations that, hey, brother, do you not see the similarities, DJ? I think it's awesome. So back the truck up. I love that. Does that all stem from that video you posted about the truck backing up and dropping the hat on Woody's head?
No, it stems from, offensive puns through freight terms like what the truck, back the truck up. We're obviously replacing a pretty obvious word in these titles. Yes. I think the site was initially going to be called What the Truck, but we couldn't get the name because the initial idea was like, What the Truck's content has been good and we want to expand it even further. That's one of the reasons I left Put That Coffee Down was to expand What the Truck even further. And because what Freightwaves does a really good job at is addressing like the market and the C-suite. But the driver behind the wheel, the broker behind the desk, that's more what Back the Truck Up is about. It's about the people actually out there doing the work and having a portal for them, a media for them where their voices can be heard, their issues can be addressed, and we can have a lot more fun of it with it. It doesn't have to be as sort of stiff and as buttoned down as some of the stuff you see in freight. And someone like me who's already sort of pretty loud with stuff, that's fantastic to hear.
Get out of here.
Because there's so much further and deeper we can go. We've been, this has looked good for a while, but like, let's go to the next level now. Let's throw some cherry bombs. Let's throw some M80s in the trash can and see what happens when the lid blows off.
I love it.
I love it, especially that format, because you're gonna have You're gonna have C4 going off in that trash can, brother. It's gonna be big.
That's awesome.
Well, I mean, look around too. Dan, we're in a much more mature space now. I mean, if you think about when I started, there wasn't much competition either, and now I got to elevate the game, and I got to elevate what I do at Freightwaves to compete with what a lot of other people are doing out there as well.
It's true. It's true.
Another thing you said, Dooner, that I really liked and appreciate you telling the story, obviously, and not and coming from a family that deals with drinking and alcohol abuse, things like that. I definitely I give you props for the journey. But you mentioned living resume, and I think Dan really touched on that when we talked about doing the podcast, and I love that you said that, because I think having the courage to just put this stuff out there really is amazing.
Well, it's the first step, right? And it's the authenticity. Like, I could share that when Dooner and I first spoke, if it was all sugar and roses and it was no, none of this ever happened. It was kind of this, it wouldn't resonate as much. But Dooner's story resonates with me because I live the exact same thing, and it's going to resonate with other people that are recovering alcoholics and that have moved on in their life and used to get in their own way. I mean, I can remember going to business meetings. And I knew, just because of the trained professional I was at drinking, that my days are write-off. Like, I'd go out for a business lunch and they'd all leave, and I'd stay and drink 6 or 7 more beers and then drive home.
Just can't touch it. I just can't touch it. Right? You got to keep the dragon sealed, like way down deep in hell, man. You got to keep that locked in. I don't think what people understand too sometimes is that it's not fun. Like the last 5-6 years of my run drinking were terrible. Like, I was drinking a lot, but I wasn't getting drunk. I was just feeling sick or keeping myself from feeling sick. It was really deep into the throes of addiction. There are a lot of times you're like, I don't know if I'm going to wake up, and I don't know if I care. And that's when you really have to get that addressed, because you're obviously running dangerously. And when you have the responsibility of kids, especially, that adds just a whole other layer. You have to grow up a little bit. You have to really take on those responsibilities and look outside yourself. But that's been really good for me. I mean, the three greatest things, obviously, we're getting married, having my kids, and then just starting a show, all my babies.
There you go. Now, do you find you switch one with the other? I find sometimes in my world, I mean, I've got an addictive personality, and in my world, it's like I go in with feet, head, legs, like back, like I just find I go from one to the next, meaning like my passion and my focus when I'm on a mission is like, you can't stop me. I will go through mountains. And part of that, I relate back to my addictive personality. Like, I'm addicted to getting that to completion and making it happen. And it's like, everything moves out of the way. I'm almost like a bull in a china shop. Do you find that on other aspects of your life? And have you ever related that back to your addiction?
I have. I've been reading a lot about the role that dopamine plays in forcing us and in hyperfocus and in ADHD. Because when I was diagnosed for all this clinical depression, they also were like, you have ADHD, and they wanted to put me on Adderall, which I thought was weird coming into recovery. But I tried at first and was like, this is a drug. This is a drug. I want to start like inhaling this or taking the whole bottle after 2 days when it stops giving me a feeling. That's what I want to do. So I can't be on this anymore. I actually switched to a non-narcotic Wellbutrin, which has been much better for me. But I've been really reading about that. It's such a scary thing because it's awesome. You have this superpower of like hyper focus, but then you also have this fear of like, I hope I don't become disinterested, because if I do, then it's like dead to me. Then I completely like move on. Like I can become like obsessed with like pinball for a week and become like a really good like pinball player, but then I'll like
grandmaster pinball player.
Yeah, I never want to touch like pinball again. That's just a recent foray into something that I was doing.
It's kind of like when COD used to come out. So a couple of years ago, I stopped playing. But when the new Call of Duty would come out, literally my son and I would get it like immediately, and we would sit on the couch and I would not move until I beat it. And then I beat it, and I wouldn't touch it for another year. And then and it was just, and it all started when the Matrix games came out. because I'm a huge Matrix fan. I'm like, the Matrix game came, and I sat there and I just played.
DJ,
the game
how do you
until
put
I
up
beat
with him? How do you deal with this guy?
Listen. It's I sit here and smile most of the time. This is what I do.
Lisa says, "Good for you, Dooner. Good for you."
Yes. I agree.
Jeff says, "Honestly, it's the best right here, folks." Thanks, buddy. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff.
It is. Honesty is the best. What the truck? Most of us got into logistics, not knowing what was going to end up. It was going to end up being a career. Absolutely. Once we see the potential and flexibility in industry provides, the opportunities are endless. Great story, Dooner. Always go all in. Stay blessed. Oh, that's awesome, Daman.
That's why I always ask that question on Insiders about, what people wanted to be when, especially these founders of companies, what they wanted to be when they grew up, because almost none of them knew, like at 16, that they would be doing anything within transportation. They may have been like, I wanted to do something with tech, or, I want to do something with payments or finance. And then eventually they found their way into this business. And the cool thing is when you're talking to these founders and CEOs, they're getting younger. Or maybe I'm just getting older, but they seem to be getting younger and younger.
It's kind of like Big Macs are shrinking and shrinking as I get older. The Big Macs aren't as big as they used to be.
Easily confused. They keep getting younger, but I stay the same age.
There we go.
Little Matthew
I thought the line was coming.
All right.
Yep.
Greg says, "I still want to know if that beard is seen just for men. I'm jealous."
Oh,
you go deep in here. You go deep in here. There's plenty of gray on their way through.
That is on point there.
Lisa says, "Story resonates with me too. Just over a year ago, I organically decided to not to drink anymore. Thanks for sharing." And that was a big reason, Dooner, because I know
good for you.
I know your story will resonate with a lot.
That's one of the reasons why I'm so happy. Anytime someone wants to have this conversation, I'm willing to do it, because, like I said in my story, I had a boss leader who, because he was public with it, it made me feel comfortable with addressing my own issue. So if that helps someone or emboldens someone or just gets them thinking about, especially if they're dealing with the depression side of it, of getting that stuff addressed. And if you're dealing with depression and addiction together, that's a really, really, and they're usually so tethered. Why else would you be like destroying yourself so willfully every single day? If this helps you move closer to that, more than happy to always keep this dialogue open.
Have you ever found it odd, or maybe you understand it a little bit more than I did, where a lot of alcoholism is to get you away from reality that you're depressed about, but it actually adds to it. And, that whole concept I've always found very, interesting from a psychological part, from a human persona part, because I know when I was drinking, I just loved it. Like, I absolutely loved it, but I loved it to the point where I couldn't just have one. And that was what drove me through quite a few pretty serious things, drove me to say, okay, that's enough. And it's funny because I went through quitting smoking twice before drinking. And that's what made me realize with drinking, it wasn't wait 6 months and then have one in the evening. Because for smoking, I was smoking, I quit. 5 years later, I had a cigar on the golf course. Before I knew it, I was smoking 3 packs of Colts a day. Right. And inhaling. Wow. So like I went to my doctor and I'm like, I've got this cough. I said, I don't know what's going to go. He goes, how many, he goes, you stink you stink. And he goes like, and I go, well, I smoke Colts. He's like, oh my God. He goes, do you inhale? I go, yeah. He goes, how many? I go, I don't know, like 3 packs a day. He's like, do you realize you're smoking like 150 cigarettes a day? And I'm like, no. He's like, smoke cigarettes. So he put me back on cigarettes to wean me off and quit. But that's when I realized it's an all or nothing. Like you said a couple of minutes ago, Dooner, it's not I'll be casual here. Like for an addict, it's all or nothing, and nothing meaning stay completely away from it.
Yeah, no, it's binary. I mean, in my situation, you have to turn it off, and it's not something, and it's easy. Like once it's there, it's easy. I remember back in 2009, I tried getting sober for the first time, but it was with the wrong goal. It was like, oh, if I get sober for 90 days, then I don't have a problem with alcohol because I was sober for 90 days. Unfortunately, I was dating this girl at the time who, on my 90 days to celebrate, she came home with a bottle of Jack Daniels. And we started slow, but within a month, all it took was a month. Then it's very easy for me to go, I don't drink. I don't want to ruin my drinking number. I don't think it's poison. I don't touch it on the counter. I can still go to bars. I can do everything. But you put the beer in front of me, then I'm screwed. If I start tasting that thing, then I'm screwed and I can't go near it. It's super binary. And you're right about that. I mean, you become a master rationalizer. That's the word I'm looking for. Like you'd be out, I'd be out at sales events, right? And then a bar would open up and you'd be like, oh, well, obviously I need a few drinks just to to help me sell better. It's that social lubricant. When really it's just like, dude, you drink any waking hour that you can get away with it. Like, what are you acting like this is going to help you with social chatter or something like that?
Now,
One thing that did help, though,
do you do
one
any
thing-
do you drink any non-alcoholic drinks now, like non-alcoholic beer or anything like that?
No, I'm kind of bored. I drink like water and iced coffee.
It doesn't mean
That's it. Like iced tea. If I'm like really daring, I might have like a Diet Dr. Pepper or something. If I need.
That is actually awesome. Diet Dr. Pepper
Yeah.
is super good.
Dr.
I like the
Pepper
burn.
Zero. Try that if you haven't.
It doesn't burn. It doesn't feel like I'm killing myself the same though as when you have like a Diet Coke or a Diet Dr. Pepper and just like that initial, like from a can especially, the initial like throat burn. Yeah. I don't know. There's something about that makes me feel alive.
So I got to share something with you. And I went to non-alcoholic beer because I love beer. Like I love the taste of beer. So I started drinking non-alcoholic beer, and there would be parties just after I quit drinking where we'd go to, and I'd finish off like a 2-4 of non-alcoholic beer. Right. And it was always like, it was the joke of the party where it's like, hey, dude, you're driving, you got to slow down. Right. And I remember I used to actually, like in the summertime, I would have a can in my car, cause it was just like, I was drinking beer, like a little cozy and everything with a can of non-alcoholic beer. And I got pulled over one day, and there was a ride program, and I pull up and the guy's like, "You've been drinking?" I go, "No, I just have this." And I show him, he goes, yeah, no, that's not beer. And I went, dude, you could have paused for like a split second just to ponder it. He's like, no, that's like kid stuff. He says, says to me, he goes, that goes down like water. Forget about it. I'm like, hey, that's a good one. But the reason I bring that up is because I just actually last night got a 6-pack of non-alcoholic Corona, one of my favorite beers, and Corona's making non-alcoholic beer now. And I think it's becoming more conscious in our overall environment about non-alcoholic beer. Like you look at Heineken, Budweiser, all these companies making the non-alcoholic, and it tastes really good for somebody who enjoys the taste of beer, And so interesting. Daman says, I would throw non-alcoholic parties for years of seeing people getting too tipsy or saying something they regret. Yes. They decided to make all of our events, all family events where the kids were invited and be able to see their parents in a great light. You know what, Daman? That is awesome. Because how many times as a business owner, or how many times have we been at a function where somebody that's had too much tries to tell us how to run the business, or just gets that, maybe that was you, Dooner. I don't know. It was me. I'll tell you for sure. When I started in this industry, I was 17, turning 18 when I started. And at the first Christmas party, I think I just turned 19. And I remember sitting down with the owner, and I'm drinking Johnny Walker Blue, and I'm smoking a cigar. And he comes up, he goes, and at this point, the Christmas parties were all free. Like all the booze and everything was free. It was a smaller company. He comes up, he goes, "Do you know how much that alcohol is, that scotch is?" And I go, "No." He goes, "Do you know how much that cigar is?" I go, "No." He goes, "You don't produce enough to drink that." And I go, "Well, let me tell you about that."
Oh, wow. All right.
And it's funny because I mean, I'm a friggin' kid, right? Like I'm a kid, and I went on to tell this guy who'd been in the industry like 20 years how he should run his company, and I vividly, because on the Monday morning he comes, he goes, "You and me, we got to talk."
Oh no.
I mean, it's a tough combo for young reps too. A lot of times they get invited to their first conference or something. They haven't been to one in a while. They see the drinks are flowing. It's almost like a wedding sometimes. Each way you look, there can be a shot put in your hand plus a beer in front of you, and you got to be really careful, because when you start getting effed up, you don't remember those social norms that you need. Like, maybe this would be a really dumb freaking idea to challenge my boss on me spending too much money on a super top shelf, whiskey here.
Yes.
So Dooner, exactly. Share with us, because I mean, you got out of your own way. How would one, if they're not achieving the results they want, if they're having self-doubt, what are some suggestions you would give for people to say, like, listen, here's how you get out of your own way, and here's how you really start to achieve what you want? What are kind of some of where do you start to get to where you want to go, I guess, is a better question.
You got to stop. Every time that voice comes up in your head that questions what you're doing, especially when you're doing negative stuff, maybe it's drinking too much, maybe it's using drugs, maybe it's cheating on your wife, maybe it's cheating on your company, maybe it's embezzling. I don't know what it is, but whatever it is that's holding you back, there's usually something really negative going on internally, and you have to start addressing those forces. And those forces, those pressures, can hurt not just the job that you're at, but your growth within the industry. And maybe the company you're with isn't the right one either. Maybe you need to reevaluate and you need to reposition. But if you really feel like you're walking up against a wall, the last thing you want to do is run into it even harder. And that's what I was doing for years. The only thing that really helped me was seeking outside help and allowing myself to be vulnerable enough and allow my ego to go down enough to listen to other people and to not be so defensive about everything that was wrong with myself, and actually accept that, okay, you do have depression, you do have alcoholism, and I know you don't want that, and I know that it sucks, but you actually have to deal with it like no one else is going to. This is like, you can go to see all the doctors and you can talk to all the people you want, but ultimately, if you don't decide to go on that journey, you're not going to. And that's why it's hard to pressure people to go and get help. And I always think that the best method is just to support them when they need it, and also create comfortable environments for people to be able to make those reach outs, show them that it's okay, show them that it's okay for men to have these types of problems too. And there's nothing wrong with addressing them. And it does take some bravery to do so. It's not as stigmatized as you think it was. And I think that you can be open about, you don't necessarily have to. And I understand why some people wouldn't want to be open about their journey, but I think that you still can be, and you can still thrive within your industry and still find a lot of respect from people because you did come forward with some of these issues.
Yeah, I think a lot of that goes back to, the ego. And for some reason, I think males more than females, no offense to any female out there, but I think just males more than females. It's like, if I share this, or if I'm truthful about it, I'm weak. And if I'm truthful about it, people will judge me, or they will not see me in the light, or they, I know I lived that for years. I'm sure we all have. I'm sure most guys have, specifically in like high school and stuff. You bail, you fall. You're like, no, I'm not hurt. I remember playing football. It was like, I was never hurt, but inside I was crying. But it's like, if I show I'm hurt, then, I won't be that tough guy on the line anymore. You know what I mean? But that authenticity, it's actually reversed. And the more authentic we are and the more we share that reality, the more people connect with us and say, oh my gosh, I've been there. I've been there. Yes. Let's level up together. And I think that's where that, collaboration comes in. And I think that's the word for the year. DJ, I remember you saying a couple of weeks ago that collaboration is kind of the key for everything that we do.
Yes,
and, yes, even Dooner, when you were talking about, going to that other individual that came out, that was collaboration between you and him. And people are always willing to help if we ask.
Yes. Yeah. And yes, I think, Dooner, you nailed it. You got to just be honest with yourself first off, and really just dig down inside and feel what you're feeling, and be truthful and question yourself. Why am I doing this? But then like Dan said, I think this is what we're seeing. I mean, we're seeing it in sports. They're talking more about mental, especially guys, and football, the most masculine, the most, you can't talk about, you can't be this, you can't be that. Like, yeah, you just got to be you, be truthful with, and sometimes we're covering those feelings we're feeling inside by these addictions, these abusive things that we're going to, because we don't want to just be honest with what we're feeling.
Well, I think when you look at sales too, and truck driving, especially over the road truck driving, those are two jobs where you're sort of very isolated. You're on an island, and you're constantly just talking to the voices in your head as you deal with these daily stresses and these daily ups and downs. And all the voices in your head aren't good ones, right? And some of them can validate some really negative feelings and send you in some wrong directions, or set up these really negative reward pathways. Like, oh, you had a good day at work, go get a drink. You had a bad day at work, go get a drink. You came to work today, go get a drink. You were too hungover to go to work today, get yourself a drink. I mean, there's any freaking reason you can come up with these things. And you will if you're in that position, because your brain is like, that's what I want to do. And when you haven't taken control of that problem, you haven't named that problem, and you haven't held yourself accountable to that problem, that negative voice will win every time when it comes to drugs or alcohol.
It's true. That's true.
Yes.
Ryan says, I feel like logistics finds you, not the other way around. LOL. I think that's right. Because, I mean, either of you two, did you guys ever, I can't wait, I'm going to go into logistics, or was it kind of logistics found you?
I turned it down. A friend reached out to me out of Cincinnati, and I said, you can't make money doing this. that doesn't even sound like a real job. Literally, that's what I said.
I mean, mine was the opposite because my dad, he worked in this business. So, like, I grew up in the freight forwarding community in Boston. He worked for Roanoke selling marine cargo insurance, and he was one of the first peddlers of marine cargo insurance in the Boston market. And he also worked out of the New York office, so we'd go over there too. So I wanted nothing to do with his career because he would work a lot, and like on weekends he would have to sleep a lot because he would spend so much time out with like clients and all that kind of stuff. So the last thing I wanted was life in logistics. And the only reason that I even went for that job was like I just needed money at the time in Boston. But it turned out to be I mean, two things. I mean, it turned out to be enabling pretty well because I think a lot of people in logistics do drink. So I was able to run around with the problem for a lot longer time than maybe I would in other environments. And I knew how to get to work and I knew where the paycheck came from. So I didn't really do anything to change or improve my circumstances while that was happening. And it's really like anything. Once a hardship happens, that's when you really start to be like, oh, okay, well, I have to make changes either by force or by circumstance.
I like that you said that because getting in the job probably enhanced that ability to get to that breaking point faster. So it was enabling, but then it was disabling because if you wouldn't have got there faster, you might have been 3 or 4 years into your kid's life, second kid's life. And then, you know what I mean? So, good and bad, right? Greg says, has there ever been a time by telling the story, someone just didn't care to do business with you? If so, how did that make you feel, Dooner?
I wouldn't know. Maybe they just wouldn't want to be like a guest on a show or something because I've been producing content ever since I've been out on that journey. When people don't want to come on the show, though, I don't really care. There's tons of people out there that are great guests and have things to say. Most people do say yes, but no, I haven't really encountered any stigma. It's only really been positive. It's been people who like heard my TEDx, or they may have heard me mention this before. Maybe I've said it on a previous show of theirs, and they say, hey, let's go further with this topic. I think it's a good time to address it. So quite the opposite. If anything, I think maybe business has been gained, but it's not like the TEDx is monetized or something like that.
No, but I think also when the more you talk about it, again, it's that authenticity connects, right? Like I'm sure we've all been there, and everyone watching and listening has been there where, they've been speaking with somebody and like in your mind, you're going, this is total BS. Like, oh my God, this person is totally not who they're portraying themselves to be. And, and I think I could speak for myself anyways, where it took me a while to understand because I wasn't me. I was somebody else when I was selling. I was like two different people when I would, go home to my dog at night before I was married. And when I'd go to the office, I was two completely different people. And I would say whatever I needed to say to make the sale, or you know what I mean? It was one of those things that I was taught early in my career. And it's funny because we try and hone our intuition, but how much effort or how much thought do we put to other people's intuition? Where it's like, no, I got this person convinced. I got this, and it's like, no, dude, you're so far beyond what that. And so just I think Dooner, the more and more
Dooner,
you tell
I love
that
your
story,
answer
the
too,
better.
because in the end, it really we can't try to fit in a box to make everybody happy. We just have to be genuine and be ourselves, and the people who connect with us are going to connect. And if they have some weird feeling or they're weird, weirded out because of your story, like Greg mentioned, then
And the same goes for business. We talk about ideal client profile. Same
ICP,
exact thing for business. Same exact thing for salespeople. Not every customer is going to be a good customer. Understand that, identify it. It's just like not everybody you meet is going to be your best friend on the
You
planet.
don't need to force it. There's enough relationships. You don't need to force it.
Damon brings up something, and can you imagine this? Go.
Well, let's jump in. But like, I guess one thing that I sometimes get into is influencer stuff. I don't know if I've lost deals because of that, but if I did, like that's fine too, because this is sort of part of my identity, and it's something I'm open to.
And you don't want to deal with people that are going to be that superficial to lose deals because of that, Dooner. I mean, in the end, they're not the people you want to deal with anyway. So it's like there's never any, like in sales, in what you do and everything we do, when it involves bringing other people into our world, there's no failure. And this is my like firm belief. You will never change. No one will ever change. There's no failure, because the people that I want to do business with, the people that are like-minded, the people that want the same goals, the same drive, the same ambition, the same end results, we will always get along with. and we will attract them into our world. And that's why other people attract certain people, and we attract certain people because that's who we want to work with. Those are the people that we surround ourselves with. So Dooner, anyone that didn't come into your world because of it, you're actually probably better off, because it would have been a pain in your ass to begin with, right?
I mean, Dan, you might notice this though. I do think that people, when they do learn that story, they sometimes get a little weird. I had friends who all of a sudden because when we hung out, we would drink, then you get sober and then they don't know how to hang out with you anymore. They don't want to invite you out to the bar. They're like, people drink. And you do lose. I'm not going to lie to you. If a lot of your friend network was built around drinking, you might lose some friends and acquaintances where the only thing that you had to keep you together was drinking. And I think even to this day, like there's times when people are going out, they're coming to visit Chattanooga. They don't invite me to go out because they're going to a bar and they think that might be a problem, but it's not at all. Like I'm perfectly fine with going to the bar. But at the same time, hey, you don't want to invite me? I'll hang out with my kids, man. I'll play some Lego Star Wars. That's cool too.
Yes.
Well, I remember our friend group that we were hanging out with. I quit in mid-July, mid-August, and in October for Halloween went to our first kind of party. And I remember within 10 minutes, one of my friends coming up to me going, okay, so listen, like whatever happens tonight, you're going to be the only one that remembers. So don't hold it against me. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, just settle down. I'm like, listen, man, I was that guy for years, right? Yeah. So you want to talk about don't holding anything against anyone? Don't hold anything against me. I was that guy every single weekend for years. And it did. We separated from a major portion of our friend group, and it was mainly me, because I couldn't, when I first quit, I couldn't be in those situations because it was too new to, I needed to heal, I guess, a bit, like I needed to build that barrier. Now it's the point where you can bet everything in your life on the fact that I will never touch another sip of alcohol, and you'll win that bet all day long. But when it first started, it was very difficult. And it's one of those things where I know firsthand how easy it would have been to slip back in. And I go back to that. If I hadn't have quit smoking, I probably would still be struggling with alcohol now. But because I knew the fact that, like, no matter what, I saw it happen with cigars, then leading back into full-time smoking, I knew it was an all or nothing. Right. But you're right. There's that friend group, that peer group that disappears, and you have to be prepared for it. I think, G.I. Joe knowing is half the battle, and if we don't know that part, it could cause a lot of, what do they call it? Falling off the wagon, I guess is what they call it, or whatever, relapse.
Yeah.
Well, I think that first year, anybody can get through that first year of sobriety, God bless them, because that's the hardest, because you're learning all new coping skills, and you've had the crutch that you've leaned on for so long taken away, and a lot's not going to go well at first. It's not like this instant like panacea to everything. Like there's this thing like in rehab they talk, it's like that pink cloud thing. And for that first couple of weeks, like you kind of feel great, you feel like that weight's taken off your back. Your family's supportive and they're getting, but you're kind of after that, you're kind of on your own. You got to fight through these things, and you're doing it without that safety net you had anymore of whatever your crutch drug was. And you have to deal with all of those issues. And what happens with most people who have addiction, it's not like they just really, really love the taste of it, and that is the only reason, or they just really love the sensation. It's because they tend to be using it to numb or subdue or take care of whatever feelings or underlying feelings are going on. And now you have to understand how to face with that, or live with that, or deal with that with none of the numbing agents that you had before. And that's really the hardest part of that first year. And those friends that you just kind of lose, and that reimagining of your life that you have to go through. And that's where like your closest family support system really comes in tough. And some of your business associates can start coming in a lot tougher too, because people start seeing the journey you're on. They start seeing you as more reliable.
And I found it was the little conversations I had with myself were the toughest, where you're sitting there and it's like, don't do it. Okay. Yeah, no, but why aren't I doing it? Like, what is and you start having these, conversations with yourself that could truly destroy your spirit. Right. And you bend, don't break, but that destruction of spirit, I think is what we need to preserve, because once our spirit's destroyed, very tough to come back from that. Right.
Yeah.
So we got a ton of comments here, and then we're going to get going. Try serving alcohol at a party with over 100 drivers and tell me how it goes. Any of those parties I've attended at other companies, I would never end well. There was always one person that would act up 100%.
Always.
And then Maggie says, yes, what a great response. I know we're way behind on the comments. Sorry. It found me. That's about the logistics. Jeff says, my wife told me about a warehouse job when I was 20. The rest, as they say, is history.
He's been living with that one for a long time.
Yeah, who really signs your paycheck? Oh, that's a good one, Jeff, because I think we do.
Who
really signs your paycheck?
Like, not literally, but in like the audience does. Craig Fuller may sign it, but the audience really has the power for what that's worth.
Yes, sir.
Daman says the truth does set us free. Lisa says, like-minded, they are not friends. Yeah. If you lose them, they're not friends. And you know what, Jeff? You're absolutely right, brother. Damon says, why be friends with people who are judging us, or were they really friends if it was just for drinking purposes? 100%. But these are some of the things that you have to battle through, because you don't see, like, a lot of the times when you're in that eye of the storm, you can't see beyond that vortex. Right? Yeah. You can't see what things are going to be in 6 months down the road or a year down the road. And that's really challenging, right? Plus, it's a highly addictive substance, and it's and it isn't talked about in society 100%. Antoine says it's not personal. Not everybody that comes in your is supposed to stay. Everything has an expiration date, 100%. Your customer
How do we grow, right?
Paycheck,
I like that, Antoine.
No one's going to grow at our same pace, too. People are going to outgrow us. We're going to outgrow people. And if that's not happening, it's unhealthy. And I think that also brings up a good point about those drinking buddies. When you just have those drinking buddies and they're there to support your habit, you're not creating buddies or friends or acquaintances in that time that could actually be helping you do something positive and furthering you along. Instead, you're sitting there and there's nothing wrong with killing time. Don't get me wrong. I'm talking more for people who are in the more extreme cases of alcoholism. But that's just another situation where you could be surrounding yourself with more like-minded people beyond just, hey, we like to get tanked and drive home drunk.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes. And Jeff says it right. He says your customer signs your paycheck. Remember that. And, that's the one thing, because Dooner, you said audience. Your audience is your customer.
Exactly.
Right. And your audience signs your paycheck. Our audience over here signs our paychecks.
And you're doing a great job, clearly.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. All right. So DJ, that conversation was, so Dooner, every day DJ picks a quote before we start the show. And he allows his intuition to help him pick the quote. We're going to see if he hit this nail on the head here. Go for
Dooner,
it.
You will have to tell me. I feel like I picked a good one today. But again, thank you, Dooner, for joining us. Obviously, for what you do. If you want to give a shout out for what is it Back the Truck Up?
Yeah, Back the Truck Up. The site backthetruckup.com will be up soon, probably by the end of the week, if all goes well. Everything's happening in the background, but we're working on the website staging and everything right now. So I can't wait till we hit the go live button on that. Obviously, What the Truck, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, wherever you get podcasts, or watch it live on Freightwaves TV. And you can find me on LinkedIn at Timothy Dooner, DOONER, or on Twitter at Timothy Dooner.
Awesome.
Beauty, brother.
And thank you again, Dooner. Thank you to everybody and all the great comments and all the you guys rock. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sticking around for 45 minutes, everyone. That's awesome.
Yes, for all of your time. Seriously. Every morning you want to start your day right with us. Start at Sales Chatter Live, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. till 9:30.
Ish.
9:45. Ish. Eastern Standard Time to start your day right with us. We do replay these shows if you did miss it. Like and subscribe down below if you're catching us on Sales Chatter Live or Dan Deegan on our YouTube channels. And thank you to American Logistics, Centurion Trucking. Quote comes from Jim Rohn, and it's discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishments.
Now, is that from Jim Rome? Is that when he beat up Jim Everett on Rome's Burning in the early 90s? Did he drop that quote right after? Do you remember that? That's like a sports moment right there. Jim Everett punched him in the head, didn't he? He kept calling him
I think he did, actually,
champion,
yes.
And he was like, what? And he smashed him in the head.
Yes, he did.
We started with violence and we're ending with violence.
There we go.
There we go.
To the HPLS podcast.
Live, relevant, and high performance information,